Hello, welcome to the Hidden Treasures podcast. Something, unscripted ramblings down into the abyss and back up, hopefully with some treasure. Um, Hopefully with something to show for it, right?
Yeah,
And
it's Circuit
our
2 weeks, so yeah, there's a lot of hidden treasure in the Circuit 2 in the Yellow Seas.
emotional sovereignty territory. That's why we take 2 weeks for it. Next week we're also doing this because it's one of the big ones. You mentioned you started with saying you were stressed.
Hello, Kronos is online. Maybe we can take him on for a cameo in a bit online. Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Good idea.
Mm, yeah, I feel stressed. I fly out to London tomorrow for Breaking Convention.
Oh, that's nice.
And I was just out to print the maps because I want to take some copies of the maps, and then the printing process like took longer, and there were like misprints, and that there was like some friction at the printers,
There
and
are
then now
always misprints.
they don't fit the portable thing that I bought. So like it was like fuck, my plan didn't work out. That sort of, and then I had a coaching session, my first pair coaching session of people I married. I married a couple two
Mhm.
summers ago, and now they have some conflict, and they asked me to help them out for a process, and that also took longer. So yeah, I was just like just like from one to the other, and haven't had any today. So I'm a little bit charged. I'm a little bit charged up tonight.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. You usually are, but especially now. That's nice. Ugh.
How about you? You found your phone after a week of
I found my phone. Yes, I did. This is it. I'm looking at it right now. I can't show you because it's the camera.
but you spent a week without access to survival tickets. So I'm curious what that did to your system, because we talked about that last
Uh,
week, and not having survival tickets just activates Circuit 1.
I got it back today, and I had already not had it for days when we spoke about this last week. I think I didn't. I did. I went without it for like 10 days. So I
So
went this. Yeah, I did groceries today after literally surviving on just like my stored rations, um, which was and yesterday we had a lunch planned at my mom's. So yesterday food was covered, but really only lunch, and it was really nice to see my family. And yeah, this morning I had a driving lesson, and then tomorrow I have my exam. So in a way, I felt a little bit anxious because I was like, this is not the time to be running this experiment, you know,
the,
because I need to
the
be well.
hunger quest, the involuntary hunger quest.
Yeah, I don't really need the like scraping the bottom of the barrel quest when I need to be well rested and well prepared and well fed and nourished for my hold on. I'm breathing properly. Yeah. And but I did it because I don't know, I guess I like to when a crucible moment like this is happening, it kind of everything wants to come together and let itself be known and let all the facets of transformation that are in the works announce themselves. I yeah, it was in the car all along. It was in the driving lesson car all along. Nobody had just seen it. It was just like next to the seat. Um, yeah, so I found it there, had my lesson, and then after that I went to grocery shopping. Didn't get much special things, just normal. And it felt really pathetic being in the supermarket, being like, okay, now I'm allowed food again. It's like, this is insane. Like, it really shows you how dysfunctional our society is. Like, I already knew, and especially with how fake money is, and how it's faker than it's ever been, but it's that doesn't mean that it's not still locked behind access.
Hmm. It became very real in this experience. No money, no
Yeah,
food.
and the money is fake, which helps you to see that the food is fake. So much of the food is just like, you know, doesn't have the nutrients that it used to have. Doesn't have the flavor, doesn't taste of what it's supposed to taste like. It's, yeah, like, sorry, what can I say? But this current model of society has run out of steam a long time ago, and is just going on, is continuing on sheer inertia. But the content's gone, like the inside's gone. That's why the handoff to fascism seems so smooth, such a smooth transition,
Yeah.
because
Give us a strong man, get back control.
that's the model. That's the model. Yeah, take that's also good Circuit 2 stuff. No, like territorial claims and feelings of safety by either control or domination or subjugation. Subjugation gives people a sense of safety as well. I felt very subjugated and subjectified by being, yeah, by becoming aware of, like, hey, when you can't take for granted the fact that you can just go to the supermarket and get food because you don't have your silly phone. It's like, it's so cringe. I'm in a way that I'm glad it's over, but I'm not glad about the way that it's like the dissolution is not going to be clean and nice and sweet.
I'm curious though how like you regulated through it, because I mean you spoke about it last episode a bit, that there was some anxiety coming up about, like the cash money running out and your capacity to get food and groceries also running out.
Mm-hmm.
But then you said like it's not
Oh,
like you feel the activation,
yeah.
but it does not feel like super threatening. So I'm curious, like, what was your
Ultimately it wasn't, because it was the comedy. Was my solution was comedy. Like, I had enough like oats and pasta and whatever, like cans of anchovies or whatever going around, and some frozen fish and some frozen uh, like vegetables. So my stocks lasted. My stocks lasted pretty much. If I could glide down to the surface for a soft landing on this one, and I knew that I could.
mm, okay, so there was no real like fuck, like how
No,
am I
I
gonna
did I did inventory, and so, like, yeah, I I realized a few days in, I went to I had a shower, and I realized I was sitting in the bathtub, and I realized, no, the phone has to be in the car. Like, I just discerned that it would be there. Like I said, didn't I mention this on the?
yeah, you said. And I love the way that you gave me the comeback, because like you should do a sigil to kind of like make sure that it manifests there and it's actually there, and that you land in the reality when your phone is there. And it's like, I don't need a fucking sigil for something that my brain already figured out. Like, and I love this comeback. I mean, and this ties to the same like fucking monkey the Luffy confidence that you have about. I just like I bought myself a car before I managed to actually get my driver's license. And
Yeah.
that's just like a magician reality distortion field, and I fucking celebrate you for that, because for now I just like thought you're more like this mystic surfing synchronicities, but you're not. You do actually do the magic as well. It's like, you
Mm.
state it, you declare it, and then it fucking happens. So
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, this time I did do it on purpose. Yeah, it was not the best deal I could have had. I'm sure that, I mean, on my mind there's like a little bit of like, oh, I should sell this car and get a different one. But no, 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 no. It's not that I couldn't make a little bit of find a better deal and end up with a couple €100 in my pocket, but I just don't want to do it. I don't care enough to do that. I'm just going to not at that time and just drive this one for now. Yeah.
so yeah, we're moving like from the Circuit One topic of survival around not having access to the money tickets, the food tickets, which for some reason are locked in your phone. Like I have a normal card, you know, I can still go.
Yeah, I might there should be one floating around somewhere, but I have no idea where that would be, and I usually just I've been using my phone. Like when I was in Berlin with you, I didn't have a PIN card. I had my phone. Like I've been using my phone as my PIN card for months, you know. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized, no, I shouldn't be doing that. I should be having a card at least. But
And some cash.
and without you can't actually get cash with the phone. You have to use the card to get cash. But
Yeah.
the Netherlands, there is no such thing as cash. You gotta.
What? You're already transitioned to a cashless society in the Netherlands?
It's not cashless. Like you could use cash if you want. You can use cash if you want, but it's not. It's not.
Like people will like if you wanna pay in cash something, people will go like, "What?"
No, but it's not an everyday thing.
Mhm.
And there are, yeah, there are definitely like in Berlin. There's plenty of places where they just don't take card.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're more likely to find the opposite in here in the Netherlands. You're more likely to find places where they don't take cash.
It's like, what? What do we do with cash?
Yeah.
And
So
that's so fucked up though, because like every digital transaction the banks take a bigger cut from than if you actually circulate the cash between the people.
well, I mean, have you forgotten who's in charge?
Yeah, and they wanna get rid of the cash, right? They wanna
Yeah,
get
they
rid of
don't
the cash.
exactly. We're just the Netherlands is the playground. It's the testing grounds, and that's because it's such a urbanized locale. Um, yeah, that by the time if you try to get into into nature from where I am, so from The Hague or from Amsterdam, let's say you want to go into nature, by the time you're at somewhere that you would call nature, you're almost in Germany. You know what I mean? Like, might as well just go all the way to Germany.
Germans love their cash. Like I think there's a bigger resistance to the idea of the cashless
For sure.
society here.
No, no, the idea that there will be a cashless society is gonna in the Netherlands. It's visible, but places like indeed Germany or Spain or something, it's like no way, not for a long time.
I I got myself a water filter, and it's like yummy improvement of the water tastes so much better, and now it feels like also like, oh, I'm actually giving good stuff to my body and not this like fucked up water. I think this is gonna revolutionize my health as well. Talking Circuit One stuff. So
But it's not just a Circuit One thing. I think this is also a Circuit Two thing.
also,
Yeah, it's about like treating yourself as if you matter. It's not just
mm,
about raw survival or like I'm safe or not. It's I matter enough to take it to go the extra step and to cherish yourself. It's love.
love and water for the
Yes.
cat mom.
Yeah. This is these are acts of self-love, and that's I feel like it's downplaying it a little bit to say, oh, that's Circuit One stuff, survival. It's like no, no, no.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, Circuit Two. Let's kind of like bring in a bouquet of stuff, because Circuit Two there's a lot on the map, right? There's issues around self love and self care and self worth, about self image, about like also
Yeah.
delusions.
Longing.
Belonging? No, not so
No?
much. Belonging is a more a Circuit Four thing, but attachment for sure. Attachment, shadow stuff.
Yeah.
So like this shadow tango relationship stuff, alchemy, emotional alchemy.
Yeah.
Then there's all those like power game stuff, dominant submission that you already kind of like hinted upon, with like totalitarianism on the rise, um,
Yeah. And
control games.
yeah, you know what I find so silly or pathetic about totalitarianism? It's that it's kind of an unwillingness to admit defeat or an unwillingness to admit irrelevance. Um,
Explain.
well, it's something that you know, it's the collapse of capitalism and the collapse of liberalism. They're always prophesied to go along with fascism, and the last time fascism rose was also coincided with the end of imperialism, really, like with straight up with the end of colonial rule.
It's like this extinction burst
Yeah, it is.
behavior.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we feel like we're losing control, so let's ramp that up instead, rather than accepting the signs of the times and finding a productive way. It's like,
That's
and
like
and then, oh, hmm?
that's very Circuit Two stuff, right? And I think that
Yeah,
that was so evident in the Corona pandemic. Because like Circuit Two wants control, wants containment. You know, you want to have control over your turf, your territory, and usually we want to have control even more than what is actually under our control. And this is when shit gets crampy. And Circuit 2 doesn't, like, if you're not very well in control of your own internal territory and sovereign in your own territory, uncertainty feels really challenging, right? And then you have a rise of uncertainty, and this is what we're having, right? In the moment, like structures collapse, and the order that we've been navigating with collapses, and even like with the higher stakes of, the chaos coming our way, with different systems collapsing and climate collapsing as well. There's a rise in uncertainty, and that's like, if people don't have their shit together in Circuit Two, you have like usually two different responses to emotional responses that are like core programs of Circuit Two. You can either go like, "Oh, please, Daddy, make it safe again. Yes, please, bring control back because everything is going out of control. So we need a strong man to make it safe." And this is where people like lean into totalitarianism. And the other response you can have is like this: "Fuck you! I won't do what you tell me." I kind of like go into like rebellion, like active rebellion, and feel the anger and protest and stuff. So, um, but both of these responses are not sovereign, are not are not from a place of like, okay, I got my shit together and I can navigate. They're just like emotionally patterned program responses. And the thing is that the totalitarian coup banks on that, right? They bank on people like in create even like creating more uncertainty for people by dismantling the government at fast speed. And then people respond either with like, "Oh my God, somebody needs to be in control now. Please, can somebody create control again so that we feel safe and secure?"
Mhm.
And others are gonna be lose their shit and gonna be like in full on rage rebellion.
Yeah. Well,
And they're banking on both responses.
I think I'm on this cycle. I'm ready to lean into not knowing. Like I will not abandon my responsibilities in terms of um, solidarity, but but I'm not going to believe that I have the answers or that there's an ideological solution. Although, on some level, it doesn't really feel true. Maybe I have to acknowledge that I also still long for an ideologically sound solution. But I'm not going to default to it. I'm gonna admit that I don't know right now. Yeah, I think I'm gonna navigate this time with softness somehow.
With softness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a choice, because I I do have a choice. I feel like, in a way, the real defiance right now is to act as if there is still the freedom to create something else except the confrontation.
Yeah. Yeah. And remaining soft and open hearted through the process. And this is yeah. I think this is what landed for me this weekend. Um in my emotional territory process. Mm. It's about the capacity to remain in softness, and I'm not being that much with the softness and the squishy parts of me, because this whole I'm on a mission and I'm a tough gal, and I have ideas and big projects and plans and all that Mars Yang energy. Just there's not that much space for the softer parts of me.
Mm-hmm. And yet, I think you're doing it anyway. A little. Acknowledging that, getting a water filter, crying instead of going to a party.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Sitting with the longing, sitting with the unmet needs, and hearing the pain behind that. Because
Right. Now, imagine if we would cultivate some ability to sit with unmet needs and acknowledging the pain behind them in the political sphere. Right? This is one way. We don't need to go down this silly fascist confrontation route. Is is yeah. Yeah, liberalism failed everyone. Let's acknowledge that. Let's but there's this
that was not cashed in. Yeah.
this idea that we just can't admit defeat in a way. The, I'm stuck on like admitting defeat, but do it beautifully and with gentleness.
Mm.
This was on my co-star today,
Oh.
and I kind of it had me thinking of like writing sad songs, and I have been writing songs, or I've been at least writing lines for lyrics and playing guitar, and yeah, getting into it a little bit, and like yeah, softening. Like yeah, there's no need for defiance or rebellion or revenge in the situation right now,
Mm.
but there's a untapped power in admitting defeat. that there's
without collapse though. Like, I mean, without making a drama of it, without going into victimization of the
not
defeat.
wound porn.
Not wound porn, exactly.
Yeah. No. Like the like it's like the it's like putting some love on the hurt parts.
I'm sitting with them and just like acknowledging that there is this longing, this unmet need, this defeat, this pain, this thing that was never met.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and sitting with that in grace and discovering your own capacity to nurture those hurt parts. That's its own level of transcendence. That yeah, we. I feel like there's a strength in that.
I felt so too. I felt so too. Like, I mean, the process was interesting because I already felt the feels coming up on Friday when I canceled the date with the fox, and then I was like, yeah, I'm good with solitude. I'm just gonna work and send out the podcast, early on Friday, and it's like honor that I have a Friday night of solitude and I can do work. Awesome, like the workaholic bypass was working.
You were working on a Friday.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pathetic like that. Friday night and I'm working.
Weren't you like? Didn't you have a part of your vow not to work on Friday?
No, I said like 2 days a week, but I can choose the days a week. And I was supposed to not work on Friday because I had a whole day date with the fox. We're gonna meet like in the afternoon, but he like got sick, so we canceled. And I was like, well, I have this other thing going on Saturday. There was like Uhu meeting because Uhu is closing and I'm part of the closing team. So it was a Uhu meeting, and then there was the fool's party in the evening. And I was like, okay, all right, then I'll work on Friday and I'll take Saturday off for, like meeting people and being with people. But instead of that, I woke up then on Saturday already feeling like the feels a bit rising up. And then I decided, okay, like gremlin feeding time. And I went into a YouTube scroll that yielded like some Huberman shorts, and some Game of Thrones shorts, which was interesting. Why the fuck is YouTube feeding me Game of Thrones shorts?
It's the
What?
drag.
Circuit 2. It's also like, Power Games, Game of Thrones, Dragon Queens. There's some shadow content there. Like I do see it too, that part of my inner architecture resonates a lot with the Daenerys Dragon Queen character, and some also with the Lion Queen character, like the darker parts of my psyche. Um, Power Games of Thrones. But it was still like, it was not really satisfying. And then I still scrolled for like 2 hours and I was like, okay, fuck it. I need to get out of like, there's feelings to be felt. And then I kept on scrolling for one more hour. Like I did like a 3 hour scroll on fucking YouTube Shorts. It was so unsatisfying. Like Instagram would have been at least fun, like there would have been at least some fun
Oh
content there.
no!
But then I noticed that
Oh,
that is just like feels coming up, and at some point I was like, yeah, fuck it, I just need to go into it. I just need to feel it, and then I intentionally put on like an emotional release playlist, and I just went for it, just like dive straight into the wave.
beautiful. Was it worth it?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, because I discovered that, and this is I was my inner teenager that I had that showed up, and I think like the whole story with the fox was also a lot my inner teenager being in love with this guy. It was like
Mhm.
the dream guy of my inner teenager, so dreamy. Not really suited for as a partner of myself, but like my inner teenager was like really really into him. And yeah, there was just like this longing or this sadness for this unmet needs and this not being seen, and this like, you know, this girl that just has like so much love to give and would wear her heart on the sleeve and would just like go in full in any kind of like romantic entanglement and give all of herself fully, and most people would run away from that because it was like too much and too overwhelming and couldn't
Hmm.
handle. And that story happened over and over and over again, and yet she was still willing every time, again and again and again, just like give her full fucking heart. And at the same time there was this feeling of like, with all my like, you know, workaholism and mission orientedness and big plans I have and whatnot, that there's no space for her. There's no space for, you know, just that wild, untamed, deeply loving creature, and that I've been very closed off in my heart as well lately, being like a lot in my mind and a lot in my game plan and in my strategies and whatnot, and doing
Yeah.
celibacy, so like not really allowing connection either. And yeah, it was just a lot of that. Like denying myself connection and denying her connection as well. And also this experience a lot of, yeah, that, you know, people see me a lot for, I don't know, the healer, the lighthouse, the guide, the magician, the legend, whatnot, that's going around. And people like to have me around for that, but I don't feel seen or met in that, in those parts that are just like more tender and also romantic and dreamy and wild, and, you know, it's like looking for adventure and looking for intensity. And so there was a lot of that coming up, and then you did this reading as well in the of the chart, and that just like hit for another wave. Like, you know, I was just like calming down and like, okay, I can go on Discord now and check what the crew is doing. And then yeah, give me some feedback too.
Yeah,
And then
you're
yeah,
on a roll. You're like,
you always, you said something like, you always show up for everyone, but it's not a given, or it's not obvious that they will show up for you. Wow, next wave, like,
it's because you have all your planets on like one side. It's all on the ascendant side, and nothing is on the descendant side. So it's like all on the giving side, but not on the receiving side. That's how I interpret that.
and I have a hard time receiving, and there's that unmet need because there's still this longing for receiving.
So maybe there's maybe it is maybe you're not good at receiving,
Yeah,
and
I'm
maybe
not.
people tune into that and they're like, yeah, you know, as long as you know, yeah, maybe it's more easier to in a way. It could be like you could take a bit of ownership on that, you know, be like, hey, maybe people find it relatively easier to receive because you're very giving. You described as also your inner teenager is very like, oh, ready to give everything, but you didn't say anything about the way she expresses her needs or how she receives. It was all about, oh, she's ready to give everything. So maybe people find like easier, like, okay, well, that's how you show up, but it's not really clear what you want out of the exchange because you kind of show up as a legend, as a lighthouse, as a something, as a giver. Maybe it's good to, and I think receiving is also a learned art.
Mm,
That's very very good work to get into actually. Many people don't know how to. I learned how to receive just by in a way surrender. It's really about surrendering and yielding. So yeah, that's maybe this is the the synthesis between the thesis of giving and the antithesis of receiving. There's a synthesis of yielding. You
So it's
yield.
about control then, like letting go of
Yeah,
control.
yeah, and you yield. In yielding, you yield what you were holding on to, which is a form of giving where you're just not holding on, and you're yielding also the space in which you may receive. It's like yielding territories. I mean, I know I don't have a claim. We can share. So maybe this is for me. This is also, I think, the key to how to approach periods of time of where the where there's a lot of potential for conflict and uh, dichotomous st- clashes, is to yield in advance,
Mm.
not to roll over, like not to give, not to let somebody win.
Not to submit, but to yield.
Yeah, yeah.
So how does that look like in the collective scope of what we're going through? How do we yield to that, to techno-feudal fascism?
Well, in a way we yield, but we take it down with us by yielding.
Mm.
Right now, it is still in a state where it derives power from being taken seriously.
Yeah, that's what the Enchantress also said. I love that bit. Like Pippi Longstocking, the Pipilotta. She just does not take the system seriously.
Yeah. So if by yielding here, we draw it down. Like, hey, yeah, yield is another word for harvest. Indeed, it's like, yeah, we should, like, in a way, what I said. Like, let's get back to what I said about, like, that fascism is a way to not admit defeat,
Mm.
and in a way, it's describing the not willing to admit defeat of the irrelevance of Europe in the current geopolitics. Um, that makes it as if there is something to control at all.
Mm.
But what you find with this attempt, like, fascism doesn't last long. It doesn't work.
Mm.
It
It's a wave, it passes.
it's a way, and in its wake, famines, mass graves, lots of pain and struggle. But it doesn't last. It does not build 1,000-year Reich. It does not. So yielding in this sense, like, it's like, hey, what we have, let's share that, and let's not, like, let's acknowledge the defeat of, in this case, the West, Europe, capitalism, uh, industrial modern, like, society with all its built-in deliberate inefficiencies that we call profit. This model has been defeated by time and reality.
Mm. And we just need to yield to its
And we
dissolution now.
Right, and we need to yield to that dissolution. As in, we also we need to. So there's, in a way, a strike, like a general strike of, like, no longer feeding into it, no longer working to support it, no longer buying into the illusions that it provides, the easy answers of ownership or
Accessibility of goods.
investing. Like, when I see now, like, people who are now using, like, a couple €1,000 of their savings to get into investing.
Give me the money, I'm gonna build a game.
Yeah, really don't, like, no, it's not, it's silliness, it's so silly now.
Kronos says fascism is holding onto power and not yielding to the winds of change. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like the extinction burst. It's like
it's
the,
like,
the
if we admit defeat in a productive way, while there is still something left to share and rebuild with, then we have a chance.
mm,
Even if Russia, or even if Putin uh, can take over large pieces of Ukraine, and people are, well, America pulls out of NATO, and then what? Like the only way that Europe could be defeated by Russia in war is also through continuing to try and maintain structures that are already falling. So, for instance, one untenable position is the city as such.
Mm.
Um, yeah, we don't really have, and climate change is also here. Like, we don't really have the land base to. So, right now, the amount of agricultural land needed to support somebody is 0.09 hectares. And in Germany, there is about 0.2 hectares per person of agricultural land. But if
With
we
permaculture, we could make that more yielding.
no, but with if we do permaculture now, if so for now there is still a technological society, but we need to assume that once global trade collapses under the weight of climate change, there won't be any spare parts, and eventually we'll have to give up these machines. If we acknowledge that reality now, if we acknowledge that level of defeat for the technological state now, we can use the last time that we have remaining in that paradigm to build structures that are going to last for the next 150 years while new generations are born and figure it out and learn how to adapt to the new reality in ways that we can't predict.
Yeah.
To because that number of 0.0 that 0.09 number is going to increase as we run out of fuel, as we run out of inputs, minerals, fertilizer. You need more and more land until where you actually end up above 0.2, and then there won't be enough for everybody. So that's why we need to use the time we have now, not to invest in weapons. We need to invest in flattening that curve. That's the curve we need to flatten right now. We need to invest in our total permaculturing the entire land base so that we spread out this so that we buy ourselves time in which to learn how to live on the land again. That's what we need to do right now. And the bonus of that is that we de-emphasize city life. We de-emphasize our reliance on global trade, which means that the integrity of our society right now leans on global trade and on cities. And those are easily attacked things in a war between parity powers like the EU or Russia. But if we just don't do that and we spread out and do the permaculture thing, then you really have to it's much more then you end up already in the proper guerrilla war trenches from the start, which is a more survivable outlook militarily, and b a much less rewarding fight. There's less because the idea is if you can threaten the state with toppling it by undermining global trade and attacking cities, then the state will surrender the whole country to you. But if you remove these points of failure and instead spread
Then
out,
you actually need to get dominion over the whole fucking territory.
which is
This
much
brings
less
up
likely to
something interesting about the call last night we had, because one of the pirates shared. We were like in the sharing round on emotional territory, and he was like, "Yeah, as an anarchist, I don't care about the territory and about the dominion of the territory." But then he got confronted as a social worker with a lot of youth that is very territorial, and very emotional, and indeed playing the Dominion game. So then he suddenly was like, "Yeah, fuck," like how as an anarchist that where you don't actually care of dominion of territory, how do you respond to territorial claims? And this is a bit of that as well. Like if we want to make a stateless society happen that shares the territory,
Hmm.
that can live in a collaboration and cooperation on shared territory that does not require supranational or state structures to defend the territory, then we also need to become sovereign in our own inner territory so we can hold that. Like anarchy only works amongst emotionally sovereign beings that can collaborate with one another without having like territorial dominion
Well,
hierarchy fight.
yeah, and that maybe that's also the answer to this brother about what to do with the kids who are very territorial. It's well, clearly there's a lack of emotional safety, and you were also found not to have the capacity to see through that and to see the unmet needs underneath this territorial drive. You didn't have an answer. You didn't have the emotional maturity in a way to provide that perspective. And I'm sorry to say, but that means that your claim to anarchism is a form of identity fetishism, of a form of consumerist. It's aesthetic, and it's a way to reveal your privilege.
What are the emotional needs that we need to be meeting so that we can actually live the Hobbiton Shire anarchy scenario of us all living in small communities doing permacultures without any states and kings?
Well, I think one is an acknowledgement that we will die, and that you have a way to that you have an understanding of your trajectory. That when you're born, you're dependent, and if at some point you become an adult whose contribution to the collective exceeds uh, their withdrawing, and then at some point you become an elder who again whose contribution in material sense is less than what they receive, but then your contribution is still like
Wisdom.
the wisdom, the collective memory, the discernment, the morale, in the same way that that babies and children have the morale as a contribution. Um, and that at some point, yeah, you're to understand that and to acknowledge that and to say like, okay, well, give up a bit of this egocentrism about wanting to maximize your own pleasure deep into adulthood or middle age, which is kind of for me it's a bit of a pathology, when I see people of our generation still like trying to still involved in hedonism maximizing. This is an untenable situation that is being driven by fossil fuels, and it's good to acknowledge that it's not going to last.
Mm.
That the,
Hedonism is not sustainable. Well, that depends how you define hedonism now.
yeah, but well, I mean, but I'm looking at hedonism in the context of you know
Yeah.
consumerism, and it for sure is not sustainable. The the resource use to sustain this level of hedonism is simply too high. Or too high. I mean, it's just devoid from realism.
I think the bit you said about acknowledging that we're gonna die is also an important part of the story arc that's unfolding, because those guys like transhumanists and what is that called, like the eugenists
Yeah.
that are kind of like spreading out their playbook. It's all fueled by this like fear of death and that need of like to transcend the ego into an undying cyborg body or merge with the machine in some way to evade the possibility of death.
Mm-hmm.
And also the whole, yeah, like how can we like techno optimize our bodies so that there will not be the physical decay that leads to death.
And there's the billionaires who are thinking that they will have eternal life through technology, if the few who really believe it, the thing is, I think that there's a switch that you flip at some point, that if you really think that eternal life is within grasp for you, then you could become willing to sacrifice many, many thousands of people for it, because it would be worth it somehow. Because if you live forever, you live multiples of the lifetimes that you're sacrificing on behalf of your own immortality. Hey, it's a
Wow, man, yeah, eek.
this is why I said, Full Metal Alchemist is a documentary. I posted this on the notes somewhere.
I haven't seen that one.
Worth the worth the binge.
But but that's still all very meta. I mean, when we're talking about like
Hmm.
emotional needs that people have, like, and the unmet needs that a lot of people have with a lot of capitalism, marketing, and selling us all the shit we don't actually
Yeah,
need, is based on trying to speak to people's unmet emotional needs.
yeah, and cultivating new ones,
New ones? What do you mean with new ones?
creating new unmet needs, instilling new unmet needs, awakening unmet needs in us, or stoking fears and doubt and uncertainty.
Ah, yeah, those, yeah, like the creating uncertainty, thus creating the need for like more control, or like
Right.
the craving for more control.
And
That's a
that's
classic
also
one.
happening in the political sphere. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They're spreading FUD. Uh,
But
yeah. In a way, the the pearl clutching and hype and spin around the collapse of democracy is kind of feeding into it as well. It's like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But so on the one hand, fascism is a short-lived thing. On the other hand, we have to remember Spain, where Franco was in power until his death. Um, and one of the big reasons why that could happen is because so-called liberal democracies actually didn't care after Hitler died and after Mussolini surrendered, and Mussolini was hung, or hanged. He was hanged, actually. Yeah, hung is the other one. But Franco was permitted to stay in control because the alternative would have been to let the anarchists and the communists uh, reorganize Spain. So the idea that liberal democracy is fundamentally opposed to fascism is just not borne out by history. So perhaps it's also not an adequate bulwark against fascism.
mm,
Yeah.
no,
I-
because it has conditioned people. It has conditioned people into this like very emotionally immature narcissistic, hedonic pursuit. Um,
Yeah, the thing that makes us good consumers also makes us good subjects for fascism at the same
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's
like, we need to find a solution. Like, if we're going to reorganize in a way after the fascism wave crashes
hmm
into something new, into something different that runs more along the anarchist principles, perhaps. We need to find and figure out ways to meet people's emotional needs without consumerism, without control, without catering to our narcissistic wounding.
and to me, I feel like the solution there is in acknowledging that the higher circuits are not higher, but that in a way, what we need is an evolution of consciousness. We need a reprioritization. We need a yeah, we need an acknowledgement of, in a way, the sacred. It is the sacred that we are missing. The real unmet need is communion with God. And that's why fascism drapes itself in pseudo religious terms. Um,
Because there's a vacuum there. Sure, there's a vacuum. Like liberal, atheistic, materialist society has left a vacuum um, around connection to something bigger than ourselves.
yeah. And the thing is, it never satisfied. This consumerist liberalism is like the deluxe version of the capitalist mode, and the fascism is the more austere version of the same thing. But because the liberal order didn't satisfy, the fascistic one also doesn't have to.
Oof.
So the fact that it doesn't satisfy will not cause its downfall, because that was never the prerequisite. It simply needs to substitute for the prior order. And because the prior order was devoid of morals, fascism is like the shadow of that. It's so clearly the shadow representation of all the missing pieces, all the blind spots of consumerist liberalism, just thrown in your face, and see like, oh, this works just as well, except the bodies pile up and people starve to death, and it's a hellscape. But it's still on some level fundamentally the same thing, because it's just as hollow. Okay, it's not fair to say it's not really the same thing, but
No.
it is. This is what this is from the repressed shadow side of it that will come up, and we do need to elevate ourselves above it if we want to avoid that scenario. So we do need to get into a real relationship to the things that we're neglecting and taking for granted, which means the earth and our souls, like the sacredness of our connections, the 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 fact that our relations are sacred on some level, and are not transactional, and are not, you know, about give and take, or about giving and receiving, but they are about yielding, because we are all, in a way, yeah. The thing that we're really subjects to is the whims of a of a of a majestic and mysterious divine that we can be in communion with throughout life, and not doing it has terrible consequences, and it turns every relationship we have into transactional. The relationship to the planet, to the animals that live there, to each other.
how much can I get?
to even to
Also because yeah, and that's where I come back to the receiving, yielding and receiving, right? Because as long as you are in this like, how much can I give so that I can get?
and then you can be disappointed and feel defeated because it doesn't work. But in a way, it's better for your soul that it doesn't work, because then at least you will also let go of that illusion. Then at least the road is open to the one thing that's going to work, which is sharing, yielding. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's some level of divine grace is attainable, but it's not in. There's no competition. There's no rush to it. It's like there's no way for me to reach it alone or at
Mm.
the expense of somebody else. The idea that you could the idea that you could attain divine grace at the expense of other people's suffering, that's the shadow of consumer capitalism, because it is still a colonial project. We are still, you know, it's somebody posted ontological intifada posted here on the notes. It's not just blood diamonds, it's blood avocados, it's blood bananas, the whole history of our that was a literal quote. And then something about
Chocolate.
of our yeah, chocolate, coffee. It's all
Your cell phone, the
and that's why it yeah, yeah, that's right. Your cell phone is leaking blood as it's as its scrolling algorithm stuff is replacing your sacred divine consciousness with more slop to consume. And this is exactly the that's why it can't fulfill, because this is why we are trapped in samsara. This is why we are this is the because it's the shadow. The more we try to elevate ourselves with it, like there's no high you can get from cocaine that's going to satisfy you. But that's because cocaine is drenched in blood. That's the yeah, and that's a universal principle. You cannot get satisfied. You cannot reach fulfillment from something that comes at the expense of others in an unsustainable way. That could never like somehow this in that sense the universe is fair. Like only that which can be shared can fulfill, because none of us are free unless all of us are free. That's the lesson of this reality level.
there's something I thought popping up in my head, like sharing, because I want to ground it back into circuit two, because we're going a lot into, like more divinity. It comes later in our journey with like circuit seven and transcendence, and the connection to the divine, which I think, yeah, for sure, that's why we're doing this also, like rebalancing our explorations, right? Both into the divine, but also into the interior. But about the self, about the giving and the sharing, um, it just popped up to me a quote of Antero Ali, around the question of like selfishness, right? And giving yourself. You need to develop a self to give. This is the cultivating the self and cultivating your gifts and cultivating also who you are as a person, is about that. It's also about the sharing, because you cannot share anything from an empty shell. You need to also develop a self to give to the world. And this brings us back to circuit 2 territory, because it's about the self. It's about, also self-expression, what we bring to the world and how we share ourselves with the world. and the treasures that we can share with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like a segue to next week of exploration, because in the previous week it was about exploring the shadow patterns, exploring the triggers, exploring, all those coping mechanisms that we bring up to just not feel our emotions, not feel the feels, not feel the tender parts. But the work for us to get into the highlands of self-expression, and the work to get to that high castle of sovereignty, starts with integrating different parts of ourselves so that we can become a whole self. And once you get you bring all those parts home, you have a lot of yourself to give and to share with others. Because it's not just about sharing resources. Like this, at the end of the day, there's like meeting the needs that we all have in the emotional territory, so that we're not sold onto a lot of like consumerist propaganda that tries to fulfill those needs but will not fill them. Won't get fulfillment from just more stuff and consumption and overproduction. What we actually crave is that sharing of ourselves. Yes, connection to divinity as well, but like this honest and authentic sharing of ourselves with one another, and this being seen for yeah for who we are as a person as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, but that's not separate. That's
no,
where isn't that what Jesus said? Like that's wherever people are in peace together, that's where I'll be. Something like this. But that, yeah, God is the peace we make between us.
so it's not just the work of higher consciousness, because yeah, I totally agree. And sure, the mission of liberation is to cultivate higher consciousness, is to get, also ride the wave of the psychedelic renaissance in a meaningful way, that
Mm-hmm.
all that wisdom can be integrated, and all that like expansion can be integrated and anchored well. But it's also that deep inner work that lies in the emotional territory, in the circuit 2 territory, of bringing the parts of each other home, and becoming more whole, becoming more sovereign, becoming sovereign individuals that can also hold the frequency of the divine,
Yeah.
without getting delusional,
Right.
without a grab for power, without playing power games,
And this
but
is
just like hold that frequency.
that's the Circuit Six stuff that is on the mirror of this. I mean, we did set ourselves a very tall goal here. It was the like, hey, Circuit Two brought up fascism. Like, what's the answer there? And in a way, you arrive at the word swimming around in my head now is gnosis
Hmm.
that is required here. It's about addressing these unmet needs and the unmeetability of those needs within any of the paradigms that are still involved in fighting for or against fascism on behalf of the ego, um, or on behalf of the inability to let go of a cultural model. So I think I get what you're saying about, oh, well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's bring it back to the Circuit Two stuff. But well, it's yeah. Uh, at some point, when you reach a paradox, or you reach kind of an impasse in the circuit you're in, you have to switch to the other one. The same sense that if you are in an impasse or in a paradox, or stuck or lost in Circuit Six, you have to go back to what are the blind spots from Circuit Two.
Yeah, sure, sure. Like that's why I like the
Yeah,
access of the chaos star representation, because that's the game of balance, right? That's the game of balance.
yeah,
You don't have if you don't have access to like circuit 6 and metacognition and the bigger perspective and the capacity to hold freedom and hold that space of uncertainty and just like yield to the uncertainty of the times. Like, your circuit 2 is gonna get like pretty bigot and crave fascism. And if you don't have the anchoring in your circuit 2 and know where your emotional territory is and know what you stand for and what's important to you, you just get you.
The selfish nihilist magus, you know.
Yeah, or just like very unanchored space cadets.
Yeah, or yeah, and then and then you end up again because one of the aspects of fascism as we knew it is also this sort of in a way kind of new agey um
Oh yeah, there's an interesting that we saw at Corona as well, right? How the new agey hippies at the end of the day started marching with the fascists.
and currently fascism also has all this fascism also historically has this sort of confused pseudo religious yeah unhinged aesthetic appeal to archetypes that it has no way to really embody. So yeah, they do work back and forth, and in a way, the idea that you know, sure, if you want to get to the highest points of the higher circuits, you have to fully integrate the lower circuits, but they're not completely prerequisites. I mean, children dream.
Mm. They're not prerequisites because they, in some way, and especially in our times, like the higher circuits come already activated. It's not that you need to like develop all the circuits in the lower circuits first to get into the higher circuits. They are already activated. Most of the people we call neurospicy or the edge dwellers, they have like pretty active circuit 6 access to. They sense the field, the emotions, they sense the energy. They have like higher sensitivities in circuit 5 for like sensory experience up onto overload. We have a lot more people attuned to the fields of mysticism, to sources of divine whispers or entities or collective unconscious intelligence. So it's there, the access is there. It's just that our culture has made it an act to ostracize, demonize, belittle, gaslight people out of these experiences that they already have, right? And that's what also creates a lot of our mental pathology, because this experiences are denied and are trained out of us. Um, and that creates like a lot of like imbalances in our systems, that we don't get to cultivate them in a meaningful way. And there's no avenue or there's no roles or there's no structure to cultivate this forms of perception and these gifts of perception that we already have.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's why the you can already speak of this system as being a legacy system that is already in progressed stages of collapse. And it really is time. The new world really is being born. And maybe yes, there is also the time of monsters, and we cannot hand it to them. But in a way, the birthing process of the new world does require us to yield.
And to own our own inner monsters.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Own your own shadows so that you don't project them onto others, so that you don't end up in a fight with somebody else because you think that they're the monster. This is also one more way in which you can remove power and energy and potential energy from that sort of prescribed threat of the
Fascism.
yeah of the fight of the idea of a conflict. Yeah. So there are ways around it, but they are involve owning your own shit and
Integrating your monsters.
individuate so that you have something to share. Yeah, cultivate yourself so that you have something to share.
Cultivate yourself to have something to share, so
Become
that we can actually practice sharing also the outside resources. You have to be able to share your inside resources, so that you can also be able to share the outside resources without getting into like dominion and territorial claims.
once we have this level of sharing peace, that will be the space where God is born again, where our relationship to the divine is restored. And from that, I really believe peace transcends the need for conflict.
Sharing is caring.
9:15. That's it. That's our cue. Well done.
Well done. We have another week of Circuit 2, but now like self-expression.
Ah,
So go out and shine. Let's see some writing. See some
I have my
poetry.
exam tomorrow. It's gonna
Yep.
like the floodgates are coming out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I do make it a little sigil, make it very simple.
Success magic.
Okay. Peace. See you next week, but we'll talk in a meanwhile.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Good night.